I just, as it turns out, was going to develop a lot different than the rest of my family. Nothing bad, but my interests, my politics, in the end, my career choices were things that were specific to me. But only we know what's in our heads. I don't care if some psychiatrist is really smart and he's listening to you, he's not in your head.
I wanted to look at the specific lives of individuals with mental illness and see if by expressing ourselves, by expressing our perspective, what we believe about ourselves, what we believe about mental illness, what we believe about our role in the world and in society, I feel that we might get some interesting and groundbreaking clarity around what mental illness is from a subjective perspective from people who have actually experienced mental illness.
Even the fact that it's called mental illness is, I feel, a misnomer. So I'm trying to change the language.
A friend of mine named Mesha talks about the term she uses a term called differently mentally abled. And I believe we're all differently mentally abled. We all experience different ranges of both mental well-being and sometimes mental distress. It's part of a continuous spectrum. My own life has had its ups and downs.
Public speaking is very important to heal myself and to heal consumers and release the stigma of mental illness. If I can tell my story and release some of the stigma and let them feel safer around somebody that's mentally ill and answer their questions and let them relate to some of my stories, that helps them and it helps me. It heals me and it also helps them at the same time.
I don't care what happens in life, what you do, people ain't gonna like you when you dead. So what? Why make a big thing of them liking you now? They're gonna talk about you when you're dead. Let them talk about me now. They could talk about me when I'm dead, alive, it don't matter. I'm still gonna be ideal.
Please give it up good for David Elliott Lewis.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is David Elliott Lewis, and I am grateful for this opportunity to be here tonight to present this poem, this essay that I wrote especially for tonight. It's called Am I Poor? Am I poor? There is so much poverty in the world, genuinely grinding poverty, and extreme poorness that devastates, severe and piercing, draining the soul. Am I poor? I'm concerned about the speed of my Comcast internet, yet a quarter of the population lacks electricity. I think my bathroom is small, yet 40% of the planet has no indoor plumbing. 40%.
I'll introduce David Elliott Lewis.
David Elliott Lewis, that's me. I'm an amateur photographer, and this device is actually part of a tool for healing, so I hope you'll indulge me. You shoot me, I shoot you. I've been sharing my story about mental illness since I joined the Mental Health Association of San Francisco's SOLVE program. SOLVE stands for Sharing Our Lives, Voices, and Experience. But there's always sometimes a brief moment of panic where I feel a crescendo of, like, if anxiety were light, it'd be sparks flying and my ears buzzing and my pulse throbbing. And it passes, and I get up, and once I start talking, those feelings of panic recede. And by the end of the talk, I feel energized, alive, and ever so much, and healed in a small way, but healed. In one of the presentations, one of the comments in the audience, she said, very honestly, said, you know, I'm afraid of you guys. I'm afraid of people with mental illness. And I was really glad that she said that, because I think a lot of people have those feelings. I think I've had those feelings. That's part of the stigma that this is all about.
I have not known how to talk to people, what to say. There's such a, for me, because I've gone through this thing in somewhat of a vacuum, right? When it comes to the point of meeting a new community, and then like, what am I gonna do? Hi, my name's Julie, I'm bipolar disorder, and blah, blah, blah. You know, it is the first thing. It's on the tip of my tongue. It's like I need to, you know, wear it on my jacket or something. It's like, it's so integral to who I am, and yet I'm so aware in the society that I can't be open about it. That's how I'm feeling now. And I've even gotten like the message that, you know, like an intuitive message, like, be careful. Be careful about where you share this, because people are not very accepting in the amount of conclusions that people can jump to in a second around what that means to them because of some story they heard, or the TV, or some relative, or some horror story, usually, is basically what I become standing in front of them. And, you know, it's really sad and unfortunate, and I deal with it, you know, from society, but the saddest part is how badly I've internalized this since age 16, of such extreme shame. My first comment that I usually get from people is, oh, you don't look mentally ill. So I get that a lot. And I've worked really hard, actually, to get to the place where maybe I could disguise myself.
Let me just give you a little bit of something about who I am. I'm 60 years old. I'm a photographer. I'm the father of a 8-year-old bulldog named Winston, who is a nice dog and has been a good part of my life. For a long time, I didn't deal with it. I think it was just more like, you know, I'm 59 years old. I grew up in the 50s where your parents maybe weren't sensitive to it, number one. And so it was more for them, I think, more of, if he just studies harder, I would call it the pick it up by the bootstraps kind of thing. If he just, you know, if he just spends more time at it, he'll overcome it. No.
The family part of it was a little more difficult. I can remember being spanked or being hollered at for being too slow, you know, or not going to school, or, you know, it was just my OCD, it was just my anxiety, it was just my depression. So everything all fits together now, and I held a grudge at first, but then I tried to educate them, and they were ignorant, and just like they were ignorant when I was growing up, they were ignorant and didn't want to believe that their son was severely mentally ill. This is a day of celebration, acknowledgement, and appreciation. I'm going to talk about success stories of mental illness.
I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about my diagnosis, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I got through it, and then I'm going to tell you where I am today. Ghetto fabulous. So if anybody ever tell y'all anything about ghetto, say, let me tell y'all, it's called Ghetto Fabulous, okay? Because she was fabulous. Well, the first time I realized that I had some challenges, I was about 9 years old, and I really wanted to kill myself because, first of all, a 35-year-old man was teaching me how to be a woman in a church setting that shouldn't have been happening, and I wanted to kill myself. I mean, just literally kill myself because I thought it was my fault. I thought I brought this on because I was in a, let me say my family was in a religion. They joined a church. And in this church, they had a lot of strict things, but behind the scenes, it was a whole different ball game. I heard a voice actually telling me, kill yourself, you're not worth it. You know, you won't be able to make it in this world, you know, nowhere, period.
My name's Alex Goldenberg, and I was diagnosed with a mental illness in 1982, and then after that a variety of different diagnoses and a lot of medication. I'll go into a little more detail in a few minutes. But the crux of my story is that 28 years later, because maybe almost 29, I'm no longer on medication, I'm not diagnosable, and I am a health practitioner now, I'm a healer. I went through the disability system for 10 years. I graduated from California Institute of Integral Studies with a master's degree in counseling psychology in 1999. And right after that, I was completely disabled and so riddled with anxiety that I couldn't work, I couldn't think very well, I couldn't function. And I found myself in this world of malaise and confusion and dysfunction, you know, just internal dysfunction. And I've spent the last 10, almost 11 years unraveling that, you know, healing from that and kind of asking myself, what is this about? As I was studying all this psychology and looking at my issues, and also I'm in an environment full of psychotherapists, and I'm talking about my mental illness. And really a couple of things happened, and these are my examples of stigma. First of all, my first quarter, I wasn't really very comfortable with the lithium. I could tell that it was making me feel very lethargic. Plus I was having to get my blood checked every 6 months for kidney stuff. I was really exploring things. I was feeling a lot better, but at the same time, the anxiety kind of kept coming up, and I was talking about getting off the lithium, and one of the teaching assistants said, well, that's a little macho, don't you think? Now, she's a therapist. And so I just thought, well, wow, you know, there's a stigma for you right there. You know, I make a decision that's a little radical or a little out of the norm or a little out of the box, and suddenly, boom, there's this pejorative label.
I shared some personal things with some friends, and then the next thing I knew it, I was being called crazy, mentally ill, don't have no directions. Did you get up and take your pill? You know, are you on meds today? Do you feel healthy? Is your mental illness kicking in? I mean, just a whole bunch of just off the wall things.
I think most of, at least for me, most of our lives, I would say, in this having an illness, like having a mental illness, most of our lives is about other people telling us how we're doing and what's wrong with us. So never being asked, right? So now this is our chance to put our voice in and give a voice to what this actually is, rather than being told or being assumed or having it being put on us. It's a way to say, listen to my little voice.
After the film come out, voices that he'll even solve, whichever things that we do, people see us, people know us, and the first thing they might say to us is, hey, did you take your pill today? We got to turn around and think about it and be like, oh, okay.
And how does that make us feel when somebody says, did you take your medication?
It's an intimidating term, but I really have to say, I really have to put that on my mind, because the rest, and I say the rest of the world, has not learned how to not say that. So I personally deal with, they're going to say it anyway. So when it says it, it just bounces off like a rubber band, you know, because for me.
When is it that they say that?
Prime example. If I could get into not even a confrontation, but a good conversation with somebody, and I'm expressing more than I feel, and I'm really excited, and I'm, you know, going at it, it's like, you all wired up? You all, you know, different? What do you mean? What's wrong with you? Nothing. This is me. Girl, please. It's like, tone it down. Can you reach inside your voice and tone that down? And I'm like,
toning it down. I think that's kind of one of the things that medication is about, right? Toning it down.
I can guarantee you that if you get into any kind of situation with the police in San Francisco, SFPD is a good indication of that, and mental illness comes up and they know that you have a history of mental illness, they're going to ask you right then and there on the spot, had you missed your medication or had you taken your medication? Or
I was diagnosed, but I've actually asked not to be told what the diagnosis is, although I think I can guess at what it is. Why would I not want to know? The reason I wouldn't want to know is for the same reason I don't like the term mental illness. I felt that I didn't want to identify myself as a diagnosis or a label. I have seen psychologists and psychiatrists over the years, and I'm currently seeing a psychiatrist. But I'm taking a non-medication approach to the management of my mental well-being. It took months of negotiation with my psychiatrist to get her to agree to treat me without medication. And it's funny, you know, to a carpenter with a hammer, you know, everything looks like a nail that needs to be hammered down. And maybe to a psychiatrist with a prescription writing tablet, every patient looks like they're a subject for psych meds. And some people benefit from psych meds, but being the son of an alcoholic father and seeing the ravages firsthand of drug abuse around me, I'm somewhat fearful of psych meds and didn't want to go that route.
My brother, who unfortunately died of leukemia at 50, also suffered from mental illness and also was on medication. When he first was given, Prozac was the first one. He called me about a week later. He was at with my nephew, who was about maybe 6 or 7 at the time, like at a park or something. And he called me, they live in Boston. Called me one day, all excited. He said, "Bram, it's a miracle. The drug is kicked in, it's a miracle. It's solved." That lasted about a week. And he spent the rest of his life trying to find that magic bullet. And it was never there. And I talked to him quite a bit about it. And I don't think it is there.
But I just want to just very neutrally, blanketly make the point that that is one school of thought. And that is where we operate.
Which school of thought?
The medical model. That is one school of thought that by which we operate. There are others where these issues are dealt with very differently, and there's not the epidemic proportion that there is here. People actually heal.
I like what you say about the idea of healing, because I wasn't ever presented that option by doctors. It wasn't like you have this illness and we can't wait till you're better. It was like you have this illness, stamp, brand, you know, put her aside and she'll die like that. I never, ever was told that I could heal. There's not a way I feel supported that this is something I can heal from. It has, you know, it's a process. It's not just, you know, a life. I'm not a lifer.
Yeah, it is a process, and they don't actually tell you or encourage you that you can heal.
I had gone from partial hospitalization and intensive group therapy through social services, which was really challenging. That was where I really started receiving a lot of negative messages about what it meant to be mentally ill and disabled, and in fact I remember one therapist really kind of to our horror responded to an older gentleman who had been having some issues in he was in transitional housing, and he was getting stuff stolen, and people were picking fights with him, and this is a common occurrence in some of the housing agencies, or some of the housing provided by some of these agencies, the transitional housing. And her response to him was, take your meds and don't make waves. And this kind of became sort of a theme, I noticed, in the mental health system, that we were not just discouraged from speaking up, but we were demeaned if we did. So that was very silencing, which is another reason that I'm glad that we're making this film and that we do solve.
No one is going to help you. No one. I don't even care. The doctors can't even really help me. I have to help me. I have to get up in the morning. I have to tell Idell, no, there's nothing wrong with you. Get your butt up and keep it moving. And that's what I do every day. When we talk about when I say mental illness, I talk about it like that, not holding on to me at all, because I'm not holding on to it anymore, because I can't afford to. But it's a tag that the society, or should I say, people in power will tag on you, and you will tag it on you and think you need to carry it the rest of your life, and you don't.
But what they're telling me now is I'm at the top of my game. Eric, this is as good as it's going to get for you. You're going to be on medication the rest of your life. You're going to be in therapy the rest of life. And I'm sorry, if you follow our old school psychiatric medical model, this is as good as it's going to get. The stigma with mental illness, it can be very embarrassing for the consumer, for us, to talk about it, either if we're completely healed or still going through healing ourselves. It can be embarrassing. You know, if somebody asks me, I will tell them forthright, you know, yeah, I have OCD, depression, anxiety attacks, but I don't tend to broadcast it publicly because I'm just simply embarrassed about it.
And what's embarrassing about it?
Being disassociated from society, being one of the crazy people, being a weirdo, not being normal, you know.
Now, do you think that that's the case, or is that how you feel?
That's how I feel.
Okay, so that's an internal reality.
An internal thing.
Okay.
It is also, like I was going to say, when you mentioned the "are you taking your meds" thing, it's derogatory. It's derogatory. There's a way about it. It's like,
yeah. What does that mean when people say you're taking your meds? It means you're acting crazy.
Yeah, there's something wrong with it. There's
wrong
something
with
bad.
you.
Yeah.
So how does this begin? That something's wrong with us? Is it because we step up and say, "I'm not feeling right. I'm not feeling good"?
I think society has told us that.
But I think it started for me much younger. It started when I was, I think, 8 or 9 years old, and I had a father who told me that he was sorry he had children, and we were just me and my 2 brothers and a sister were a mistake.
So I grew up in the South in an Argentinian household, being Jewish. Plus, we weren't that Jewish. So all my Jewish friends who were going to temple all the time, you know, for all the high holidays, wondered why I wasn't. So I was getting stigmatized from everywhere. Plus, I'm gay. You know, that doesn't help either. So I'm walking around like just sort of one big, I'm wrong about everything, I'm just a wrong person, is basically the messages I just kept getting. Any decision that I made for myself was so judged as misguided, you know, and selfish. You know, if you're not, I come from a family, if you are not doing what the family dictates that you do, then you're being selfish and thoughtless and betraying the family. And I think that's something I share with a lot of people. I think we have trouble being separate and distinct from our families. Even though that might be the right thing for us. My father had some issues from his childhood which he never got over. This is the 60s, patriarchal. The patriarch is not questioned. They got a lot of permission to really, you know, rule the roost with an iron fist. And he did. And he was very humiliating in many, many ways. And, you know, he began to be very abusive as far back as I can remember, 3, 4. He was abusive to all of us, but I was the one who stood up and said, ouch, this hurts. And he would get more angry. How dare you say I hurt you? And my mother would get so angry that I pissed my dad off. Then my brother would come and tell me what I did wrong. So really there was this whole, basically I was taught to enable my father's rage, enable abuse, or you're no good. All right, now that's called a double bind. There's really no way to win in that situation. My life has been characterized by my relationship with my father. We had a very difficult relationship, and everyone in the family knew it. I was always speaking my truth. I was always asserting myself. I was standing up for myself. I was responding in ways that I thought was appropriate, and I was very vocal about what I wanted and where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. Nothing seemed to work out for my dad this way. He didn't like any of it, and It's kind of a hard thing to explain, because on the one hand, my father was an extremely warm, loving guy. He was very intelligent. He was very well read, enjoyed culture, arts. I learned about theater. He taught me to enjoy theater and music. We shared a passion for film. And so that part was okay, but then he would just go out of control, and he would get very, very insulting. And he really did some pretty terrible things. And by the time I was 4, I was petrified of him. And that wasn't allowed, you know. You weren't allowed not to love your parents. How dare you not love me? How dare you? And that's what it became. So it was this battle. And of course, as a little kid, how can you control any of that, right? You just react to your environment. I wasn't allowed to be abnormal. I wasn't allowed to have any issues with anything. I was expected to be completely normal and completely sociable and do everything and really not have any issues around it, which I did. So the anxiety internalized and internalized and internalized and internalized.
And I always used to perform some OCD rituals, obsessive compulsive disorder rituals, and always, you know, take longer to take a bath or a shower, take longer to brush my teeth, take longer to eat. I would take longer. I'd be a slow poke, and everybody would pick on me and call me a slow poke. It would take me a lot longer to pack or to get ready to go out the door on a trip. And I would pick lint off the floor and straighten towels, and I wouldn't like my hands to be sticky. All the symptoms that I've currently battled in my adulthood were with me when I was younger, but it wasn't until 1997 that I had an employee. I was managing a litigation firm, and I had an employee come up to me and said he had watched a documentary that about obsessive compulsive disorder. I'll just call it OCD. And I exhibited a lot of the same symptoms as the people in the documentary, and he was very, very professional-like, very gentle, very respectful. Just said maybe you should go to a doctor and get diagnosed, and that's when and that's what I did in '97, and I was diagnosed in '97, and it all just through the years of therapy, it just all kind of came together as they dug the layers, and reminded me of my symptoms. I could pull it out as early as I can remember, like 3, 4, or 5 years old.
I was hospitalized a year ago at this time. So I'm very much in recovery still. I was stripped of, you know, security, belongings, you know, being in the hospital, any sense of up or down. I've put it as, I feel like I've been dismembered. I was first hospitalized at 16, so that was 17 years ago. That was in the dark ages. Like I said, it's common now, but it wasn't as common back then, and my parents did not know what to do with me. They put me in a child and adolescent psychiatric unit, and I was pumped up for 6 days with meds, to the point where from the time I got in and the time I left, I was shuffling around, like, you know, doing the Thorazine shuffle with my bags, because all I wanted to do was go home. And I had all my bags packed, and they told my parents, sorry, Mr. and Miss Vermom, she's not coming back. So they believed that I had become schizophrenic or whatever, because I wasn't diagnosed at that time, and that I was going to be in the system for the rest of my life. So that is an example of what can happen with when you give up hope on an individual. You know, you can say they're never coming back. We just took in this girl, very scared. We gave her a ton of meds that she'd never had in her system before for 6 days straight. Shot her up when she wouldn't take it orally, you know, day after day. And it sort of produced this thing that was never gonna be normal again. So that was when I was 16.
My parents they were nice people, but they really weren't aware, meaning maybe they were aware of their own emotions, but they certainly didn't talk about it. They certainly didn't come to someone when there were difficult times, and I never heard a lot of like, well, how are you feeling? Like let's start there. How are you feeling? Or is this difficult for you? Is whatever the situation is. Maybe saying something like, you know, yes, these emotions are difficult, but when I faced this is what I did to help as a mentor. They were more into the idea, I think, my mother might say, most people do it this way. Very interesting. Most people do it this way. So I think my parents really didn't understand what was going on, and they were more like into, look, if you just try harder, it'll work out for you. You know, it's not a matter of you're just doing something wrong. If you just, you know, click this button and do this kind of behavior, it'll all come out. Well, it didn't work that way, and I don't think it does work that way. Some people might call me more of an idealist, but I like to think, like in the art world, what could be the best that I can do when I'm doing something. In my own world, probably the only time I feel at peace is looking through the lens. Because in that moment, I'm not thinking about all the other crap of my life. I'm only thinking about one thing, which is a picture. That probably many people with mental illness are trying to get to a certain state where they're looking through the cameras for themselves and seeing a certain peace. And I think it's very hard. And I think with my family, they've been very helpful, very generous in a lot of ways, on one hand. On another hand, I think I frustrate them a lot, and I understand that. Because in a lot of ways, we come from different worlds. I didn't choose my family, and guess what? They didn't choose me either. I just showed up. Some combination of my parents and everybody behind me. My brother, my cousins, my sisters, none of them picked me. Trust me. And guess what? They probably wouldn't pick me, which is okay, because I probably wouldn't pick them, so it's fine. It's fine.
My dad was my heart. I was a daddy's girl. Everywhere daddy went, I went. The only thing I didn't like about that is the church told my father that I had the devil in me because I was a very energetic, as you guys can see now, I'm still energetic. I'm still live and on time. But I had a lot of energy as a child. I would love to just go and run and do a lot of stuff. And they said that was the devil. You know, take her home, beat that devil out of her because, so I got a lot of beatings. I got beat at church. I got beat at home. Okay, and any other church people, they're going to be watching this. Yeah, you know, think about beating your child before you beat it. Okay, think about why you beating it. You know what I'm saying? Because a child never deserves to get beat. I was taught at such an early age how to do like sexual favors, good things, you know, how to look a certain way, how to talk a certain way, or how to act a certain way. And if I did that, it'll just come to me freely. So I hated that little piece right there, just because just something will rise up in me, and next thing you know it, I'm doing something that I don't want to do. It just didn't fit me. And so I knew I was totally different. I knew things were changing. And then as I gotten older and life challenges hit me, oh my God, what else could you do? You're like stuck sometime in a world that you don't know. I mean, you know, it's like Eve. She was dropped on this planet in a bed next to a man you didn't know, and then all of a sudden she had to perform certain things. I'm dropped in this earth. Certain things start happening to me. I don't know. And then we ask people, and the first thing they want to do is give us some medication, throw us in a psych ward, say we're crazy, we're mentally ill, we're this, we're that.
In addition, even worse stuff happens. Tragedy happens unexpectedly, without warning. Quakes followed by 30-foot black waves of death. Tornadoes, fires, nuclear evacuations. Loss of everything one has held dear, or one has known or cared about. You know, I too have known loss, immeasurable sadness. I've suffered the unexpected death of a parent, a painful divorce after a long-term marriage, Bankruptcy followed by a depression so severe, so painful, I could not function. Falling into a place so dark, I lost everything I owned. Everything, including my home. Being homeless was a harsh and painful reality. The streets are mean and unforgiving.
My brain didn't feel like it functioned appropriately. I didn't feel clear-headed, and I started feeling very anxious in social situations, and I couldn't get rid of this anxiety. And so I went to see a mental health counselor at the college where I lived, and she suggested I take medication, and she hadn't even heard my issues. So I didn't want to take any medication. That's when I started wondering if I had something going on, but I really wanted to explore my issues. So what basically happened, I went to school for 2 years before dropping out, and I was experiencing very bizarre symptoms of, and I say bizarre because the anxiety wouldn't leave, and it just got worse and worse, and there didn't seem to be any apparent reason for it, although I felt very displaced where I was. I didn't feel like I belonged where, you know, in the school where I was. Everything that I was doing as far as my studies and my life journey was basically because my dad wanted me to do this, and I really wanted to go in another direction, and this was a big deal, all during high school. And I ended up complying with his wishes. And I wasn't quite putting that together at the time. But anyway, at the end of those 2 years of ups and downs and confusion, and trying to get help, really, I've been talking to counselors and therapists, and they were giving me a variety of tests, and there was so much confusion around the results of the test. I just got more and more confused, and I just felt like I couldn't handle life at that moment, and that the future, you know, after leaving school, the idea scared me so much. I don't know where all of this was coming from, but that's when I was reaching out for help, and it got worse and worse and worse, and even the more I talked about it, the more anxious I got. And then suddenly I just, I don't know what to say. I mean, it's like I had a nervous breakdown or something. I just kind of couldn't get a handle. I couldn't focus on anything, and I ended up coming back to Texas, which is where I grew up and where my parents lived. They ended up taking me to see a psychiatrist, and they gave me a bunch of tests, and they diagnosed me bipolar from those tests and from what I had been describing to them. And that's when I started the treatment, and I went on medication, and that's how it all began.
I actually had a first psychotic break at age 16 while I was a senior in high school. A lot of paranoia, you know, I was hearing voices, I was having grandiosity experiences of, you know, keen insights, and it blew me apart as a 16-year-old kid. And it was really the recurrence of that episode. I healed from that episode, but it recurred again at age 19, and that's when they were able to put a diagnosis on it, and what they said was that I was bipolar. I didn't know what it meant at the time. I remember being in the hospital. I was in the hospital again, and you know, I guess it was a bit of an epiphany, because there had been this really strange and very extremely scary thing that had happened just 3 years earlier that had been sort of isolated and then kind of got sealed right back up, and I went on with my life. And then when it happened again, you know, I didn't expect that it would then recur as much as it did. It was confusing for me. It was confusing. I don't think I was really given an explanation. I don't think I understood very well what that meant. All in all, my parents it's incredible. They've been very supportive of me over the years, you know, both financially, sometimes when I've needed it. You know, I feel like I've been the horse and I've dragged them through the mud, feeling, and in a way, I think they're weary from this whole life. You know, I know I've talked to my mom about that. She always says it's a family affair, it's a family affair, you know, and yet I think, you know, it's been hard to have that open dialogue sometimes because of, you know, you get in these grooves and patterns in families in general, and you don't see how things can kind of shift and be different. In fact, we were going to have a little family therapy. You know, I'm a grown-up now, and so is my sister, and recently, for the first time ever, to really talk about everything that happened. And I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. That was a few months ago.
We're all different. I mean, that's the bottom line. The bottom line is we all have a, I'm not in, one of the
You're not in me, I'm not in you.
Exactly. One of the differences, I think, in mental situations versus other things is objectively they can be measured. Objectively, for the most part, we can look at things. I've never seen anything up to now or known of anything that can do the same in the mental part. That is quite a different challenge, I would say. Unlike other things where you can show an x-ray and say, okay, look, the bone is broken and this is how you fix it. We're not in people's heads. We haven't been able to, I mean, we talk about science fiction all we want, but we haven't been able to really, exactly, and do it objectively. So I think it's a totally, to some extent, a very different thing, and it makes sense that it would be more difficult because consciousness is a totally different thing.
Why are we here? Why are we conscious? Why do we have this gift of conscious awareness? Is this just all a random accident? Is there a greater purpose? The actual task or the quest to kind of uncover this meaning is in and of itself meaningful and gives me kind of a zest for life, a motivation to live. Just to ask these questions and to seek the answers that have so far eluded me.
Well, I think that's why we can't rely on science alone with this. That's why we're looking at going outside of science, because it's not a typical medical condition in any respect. There's a lot of social stuff here. There's a lot of stuff. There's also a lot of things that people do not like to look at. That's why speaking our truth and doing, you know, to solve, it's difficult. These are really challenging issues. Everybody is very different, and everybody has their subjectivity, and everybody has their sensitivities, and everybody has their pride and their ego, you know? And it's very threatening to a lot of that stuff. These kinds of issues really shake us up. So it can be very, very difficult.
But
I think that's
a healing tool.
I believe so. I believe so.
I think
that's why we're all here.
Bram's point, though, that we're in some ways we really are in the dark ages when it comes to psychiatry and psychology.
Yes.
The tools that we have for that psychiatrists have, that psychologists have, in comparison to the tools, let's say, a surgeon has to deal with a medical problem, we're really centuries behind. It's a very difficult problem.
It's cultural. It's cultural too. You know.
Sure of that.
Well, in other cultures, you know, the healer is the one who flips out. You know.
Right. They go through the journey.
You know, goes into the journey, goes into the other worlds, and
right.
you know, it's seen as, you know, the people you want to take care of. You want to make sure, you know.
How do you think you learn to be a healer? You go through it.
It's
You
called
go
the dark
exactly.
night of the
You go
soul.
through it.
You have to go through it.
You know, I didn't become a healer because I set out, that's what I wanted to do when I grew up.
Yeah.
This journey, my healing
How do
led
you
me
be
to
a peer
be
educator?
trained.
You go through it.
And so, well, you can only help others heal if you have
Been
gone
through
through
it
your
yourself.
own journey of, and really that self-examination and made those connections and really kind of have an idea of that. and how to keep your energy separate, because otherwise I've had a lot of therapists and psychiatrists completely take on my issues, project theirs onto me, and you're stuck, right? They're the ones in power.
It's not an elevating model.
Right.
It's like
it's
pile
not empowering.
everything on top of somebody else and see how bad they can get, you know? And like that's why I think, I've talked through Solve, I've talked to some healthcare practitioners and some, caseworkers in situations like that. And it's like I've said, the people who come and show up to you and they look like they're frying their brains out, they could be the next whatever. You don't know what's going to happen to that person in 10 years. Treat everybody with respect. You don't know that this person is going through a process. It's not like, I felt like coming to the hospital was like being dumped into the dump yard. It's like, okay, another casualty. I know they were trying to help me, and they, sometimes have.
But they don't know how.
But it's not set up for.
They just don't know how.
It just.
That's why we, as consumers, people who've dealt with it, people who's been there before, can make the greatest doctors.
You know why
Psychiatrists.
You know why we don't know how? I tell you,
obliterate the need
you're
for
going to be on therapy forever. You're going to be on medication forever. If they knew how, would they be telling you that?
Very good. Because how do you know what forever? I mean, who's to predict, right? They told me that, and I haven't taken meds for 6 years, and I'm not chemically imbalanced. And as it turns out, it would have been
if they knew how, they wouldn't be telling.
They wouldn't be telling that, because there's no such thing as that forever. How do they know that? How does anyone, they put that message in your head, and then we go around telling people, well, I have to be on medication forever. That's what they told me.
Well, I think, but the bottom line of life, I think, is we're responsible for ourselves. No one else is responsible. No one else is going to do anything but ourselves. So to me, what this is about is being an advocate for yourself. Especially today with the internet, there are many ways to get information, many ways to explore different things. Ultimately, what I would like to say to people is to advocate for yourself. Is to understand that that's the only way it works.
Some people need some guidance on how to do that.
It's
hard with a society that doesn't let you talk and tell you what you need and misinterprets you. It's very hard to advocate for yourself. There's a lot of hoops to jump through, and it can be debilitating.
It very can.
So I think the community is an important aspect. I agree with you. We are ultimately responsible for ourselves, but the quality of our community is something we need to be paid attention to.
I think the community, my own experience in community in general, is that the community responds. I think that it does, but
a lot of people feel very much like that's not the case. But that's what we're addressing, is the voids where things need to get better. We want things to get better. I understand you validate what we've got going on now, and that's fine. But we really want to keep pushing it forward and really having ourselves be heard, saying, "Well, I never got this," and how can we remedy that, either for me or for the next person, So we just want to. It's all constructive criticism.
So eventually I ended up with 3 diagnoses: the obsessive compulsive disorder, the anxiety attacks, and the depression, and that's listed in the order of severity. It was a sense of relief knowing what I had, that there was something I had, that there was hope for it to be controlled, and I could go to therapy and get medication. And so there was a sense of relief at the very beginning. Later on, however, when I developed the anxiety attacks diagnosis and the depression diagnosis, there was more depression that set in, because I'm thinking, oh no, here's more added to the OCD that I have to deal with now, and it was a little more concerning for me than a relief as it was at the very beginning. As I developed more symptoms and more diagnoses, I developed more stigma, and that's what was really upsetting to me. I was concerned at a point because I was told it's not curable, there's no magic pill, there's no magic treatment. or a combination of the two that can cure you 100%, but it is very possible to control it and to manage your life effectively and get it under control and keep it in what they call a recovery or a maintenance phase.
About 5 years ago, I kind of went into as I tended to do, and they used maybe every 3 years or so, into a downward spiral where I guess I just had the feeling like in a death spiral, I wanted to be over. I just wanted to be over. So I got to the point where I was very withdrawn, where my days were basically in my car, driving around the city. Ocean Beach, by the way, I can recommend it. A lot of other people like me were there, which was amazing to me. I'd look around and go, oh my God, it's another person in a car, I know. To a point that I was really cut off from everything. And through my family, my sisters specifically, and friends, just like on TV, they had an intervention. It was just like TV too. I walked in and there were all these people. Through eventually this process, I ended up as an outpatient at Langley Porter at UCSF. And through them, I really, I don't know, I just didn't know what was going to happen. I just didn't know. But there were people there who cared. I have a feeling like you people, when people come here who need it. I remember one of the nurses, we were in a group, their style was that everything was in a group. Nothing was like just two of us, you know, hey, what's your problem? You know, or can I tell you? No, it was always in the group. And at the start, we'd go around the circle and people would say, Bram, how you feeling? Terrible. Okay, all right. Laura, how you feeling? Terrible. All right, all right. Mary, how you feeling? Terrible. And we started talking about these things, and I was just expressing, as many of us were, just like, I can't handle it anymore. I just can't. I can't. And the woman was there who was doing our group, the facilitator, who was a nurse, psychiatric nurse, said to me, Bram, you know what? I'll hold the hope for you, and I'll give it to you when you need it. So it's those kind of people that we need, because I didn't know where to go. So through their help, really, I got to a more stable place, eventually able to go back to work and do what I'm doing now and feel pretty good about it.
I was the operations manager, production manager of a major CPA firm down in the financial district, managing like 60 people, and the anxiety attacks were keeping me from going to work every day. I was laying up in bed, or I would be late, and I was coming off on disability, and the same day I'd come back from disability, I mean, one of the many times I was on disability, the managing partner confronted me and told me in his office that my position had been eliminated. In 2005, I decided that I couldn't hold a job down, and that was kind of the end of my career in the corporate world, so to speak.
The turning point for me was I tried to commit suicide with my children, and suicide was always the way out, just the way out for me. Let me just go, let me take my kids, and no one will have to deal with us. I never wanted to use my molestation as a starting point, but it was. And then the other thing is, I don't want to say my mom had too many children, but when you have a lot of children and you're poor, love gets missing. And I'm very real. A child needs love. I needed a lot of love when I was growing up, and I didn't get it. From my parents, from people. I was a African-American, nappy-headed little girl. And that's what they told me. And they always told me I was ugly. They always told me I would never be nothing. I would only be good for laying on my back. I would be dumb all my life. And I accepted that.
I am a native here in San Francisco. I was born and raised in the Army Street Projects, that big building that they blew down. I forget, about maybe 10 years ago, something like that. I grew up on the 5th floor with a mother and a father, 5 sisters, and it's been a rocky road, an awesome road, but a road of learning, you guys. I just have to say. I want to take you a little bit into my world about 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I'm 20 years clean this year off of crack cocaine, first of all. 20 years ago, I made the decision to say no more drugs. I have 4 children. Did I say 4 children? I didn't even tell y'all I had children yet, huh? I have 4 children who are grown and gone. Yeah! And no, they're all beautiful children. I have 3 grandchildren, 3 daughters, and a son. I raised them all here in San Francisco. At the age of 27, I was diagnosed as schizophrenic, given pills, no education, no hope, or no information about schizophrenic. On a Tuesday morning, I got up after being 5 years clean and moved into a house with my beautiful children, and they were, it was a school day, but I thought it was a Saturday. So it's a Tuesday morning, it's about 5:35 in the morning, and I just jumped the kids up, let's go. Every Saturday, we take a walk to Candlestick Park. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that area over there in the Bayview. But in Candlestick Park, they have a beautiful walking area and beautiful rocks and a whole bunch of things. Every Saturday, that's our play field. For about 2 hours, we pick, lift up the rocks. We can see little crabs. I mean, we go get the fish. We do all that on Saturday. We get up. I put them in the car with a jacket on and take them to Candlestick Point, where we usually go. Out there they have a bridge that's about 2 miles long. Yeah, maybe about a mile. Take that 2 out. About a mile. On this bridge is up high and all the rest is water. This Tuesday morning we get up, we go out there, and this day, for the life of me, I still don't know how it triggered, what triggered, but I know it happened. I put each of these children up on a ledge. And as each of them looked at me, I told them, you're going to heaven, and we are going to call it a day. My oldest daughter, which was like 5 years old at that time, slapped me in the face so hard and said, Mama, you know we don't belong up on this edge. Why are we here? From that day on, I went to Kaiser, and I can General Hospital, and about 100 more other different places I've been on this road. But I heard a voice in me that I've never heard before in my life. And I said, I have got to go see what that voice was and why would I want to do this and get help. I got 3 little babies. I'm deciding to throw them over this edge. I want to end our lives. I need to see what's going on. From that day on, I went and I got mental health. Now, I've been clean, remember I said, 5 years. On the road, I mean, everything is good. I got me a house. I'm loving it. I'm taking care of my children. All of a sudden, something hit me. I knew nothing about. And then when I went to the hospital after doing this, they decided that they wanted to take my children and lock me up. Just lock me up. I don't know what's going on. 2 days later, I get a diagnosis of schizophrenic and a whole bunch of pills and you can go get your kids. I can what? You know, I'm not knowing, but I'm here today to tell y'all that I survived.
What happened next was very disturbing. I forced myself off medication, took myself off medication. Because I was taking, I was like a guinea pig. I was being experimented on with all these medications, tons of medications, tons of side effects. Nothing seemed, they would put me on one, take me off that. I had pills everywhere. Nothing seemed to be working. I took the medication out of the picture. I refused to take my medication. And I lay in bed. I was laying in bed in the same pajamas. And as it turned out, it turned into a 7-month anxiety attack where I was in my same pajamas in bed for 7 months without taking care of myself. Not brushing my teeth, not shaving, not doing any hygiene, wearing the same clothes, and not coming out of the house and being in anxiety mode, attack mode for 7 months straight, until finally my wife and my case manager, and my pastor all got together and decided that I needed some kind of intervention to face the reality, to make me snap back in reality. It was so out of control, nobody knew what to do anymore. So they called it was my crisis manager at Kaiser, my case manager at Kaiser. She handles all the, she was handling my treatment at the time, but I hadn't seen her for many, many months. But she called the mobile crisis team in San Francisco. That's a team with a clinician, a social worker, and a psychologist. They're both clinicians that make the rounds and take people into custody on 72-hour hold that are unable to take care of themselves. So they came out to my house, and the mobile crisis team did. They took one look at me, they asked me a couple of questions, and they said, yeah, we need to take you in on a 72-hour hold, which is also known as a 5150. And then when I asked for more time, like, can I take a shower first, or I was a mess, or I don't really need to go, they called the police, and the police swarmed my house, 3 or 4 or 5 cars swarmed my house in broad daylight in front of all the neighbors, and I was basically escorted to the white car that the mobile crisis team was in, which was like an undercover police car, put in the back seat and taken to the ER, where I was eventually transferred to St. Francis, the psych ward. Now that was a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing was it gave me a wake-up call to turn my life around. The bad thing was I'd been exposed, and I'd been traumatized by this whole experience of being strapped to a gurney, because they strapped me to an ambulance gurney and took me, from the ER to the hospital, and I had all the cops involved, and it was very shocking and very traumatizing. But the positive part of it was it was enough of a wake-up call where when I got released from St. Francis, I decided to go back on medication and go back into treatment and turn my life around.
When I think about mental illness, it's something that I thought would never happen to me when I was younger, and I was always afraid that it might. I've lived in a world of fear, anxiety, sadness, and depression, but I wasn't mentally ill. That happened to other people. I didn't need help. And I actually kept it together for a lot of years. I managed to go to college, graduate school, get married, build a business, build a career, always keeping the devil at bay. And when I say the devil, for me that's just a psychological concept of all that's dark and black and fearful and afraid. But even to this day, I'm better, but I still live kind of in a world of fear. One of the fears I have is that disaster can strike imminently, like what happened in Japan. The way I dress, that's what I may illustrate. This is my bat belt of disaster readiness. You wonder, like, what is all this stuff this nut's wearing? Well, let me just tell you, I carry my Leatherman multifunction tool, because you never know when you might need a pliers, a knife, a can opener. You never know. This comes in handy. I also carry a bottle opener. You know, you never know when you need to open a beer bottle too, and a wine opener. You never know. You know, cell phone, keys, flashlight. This comes in more handy than you realize. Water bottle, juice in this case, medicine, flash drive, with all my digital memories on it. Every photograph I've taken, every document I've written is on this USB flash drive. You know, I have a fear. I could come home, my apartment could be burned down. I don't want to lose everything. What good does a computer backup do at home if your apartment's burned down? So I carry everything with me. I also recently completed a NERT program, something I highly recommend. That stands for Neighborhood Emergency Response Team Training. It's put on by the fire department. Prepares you in case we have a disaster. I got this like apocalyptic Mad Max disaster is impending view. And you know what? If it happens, I'm going to be ready. So is this part of my mental illness? I don't know, but I like to be ready. So this is part of it. This issue of stigma. I stigmatize myself and others. By self-stigma, what I mean by that is I was afraid to admit that I would had any mental problems. So I did not seek help. I did not seek help till I was about 40. That was the first time I started seeing a psychologist. And I did actually get help from that, but not until then. Although I had enough interest to study the subject of psychology. I got a bachelor's in psychology. I got a doctorate in psychology, hoping to learn more about how the mind works. And I did learn an awful lot about how the mind works, but not how my mind works. It still eludes me. It's still a mystery. A series of unfortunate events might have triggered some episodes of depression for me. Loss of parents, divorce, and a business failure all within a year. Sort of like a trifecta of calamity. And yet, at the time I blamed the outside world, you know, cruel world, crap happens to me and I'm just a victim. I don't think that way anymore. I feel that, you know, I allowed these experiences to overwhelm me. I didn't handle them well. And I kind of responded by escaping and cutting people and everything off. And it took me a long time to kind of overcome that. With help from a good therapist, I've been able to recover. It's been a step-by-step process. It's been slow. With the apartment I received through this community housing partnership, I've been able to start rebuilding my life. It's been a slow journey, but I'm getting better all the time. Every day, sometimes just a little better, but I'm getting better. I've also learned lessons. One of the lessons I've learned is that whether by one's own hand or the hand of nature, disasters happen. Without warning, any of us can suffer catastrophic loss. We can lose everything we own or everything we care about. I've learned also, however, that recovery is possible, redemption is possible.
And I ended up in vocational rehabilitation. After I got out of the hospital, I wanted to get back to work. And this was about 4 or 5 years after I had started really being part of the system, a consumer in the mental health system. I entered it thinking that I'd be there for about 2 or 3 years to, you know, help me. I was getting off the medication, and I wanted to just kind of get myself back into balance, and I wanted to get back into the workforce. And this 2 or 3 years to heal and rehabilitate ended up being this 9-year nightmare, really, where I felt like I had gone through the looking glass, and things were really confusing again, and it was really reminding me of things I had dealt with 30 years prior. Suddenly I was in that same feeling of powerlessness. I knew I needed to get back to work, and I was training training on computers and just kind of learning to kind of update my skills and administrative things. And that agency ended up hiring me as a vocational rehabilitation counselor. And I was so happy because I was back in my field. And I was doing very, very well. And I had a 3-month evaluation that was stellar. and they were all happy. I was working 25 hours a week, and I felt like I was on my way to getting off of disability. I hadn't worked full-time since I'd been a manager, and then started graduate school, and that was in the mid-90s. So this whole world of email was brand new. I tripped up management somehow, and it was never very clear. I tried to get answers about that. I was just told, don't send any more emails, and I didn't know. Anyway, it was kind of a long story, but what ended up happening was a series of reprimands, and instead of kind of helping me rehabilitate and learn these cultural, these new cultural ways, the workplace culture, they fired me. And I never knew, I knew that there was trouble, but they didn't know how to address the issues that were coming up in my transition, and it was really messy. And I ended up going to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and I got an attorney, and I ended up suing them for discrimination. So during this time, I was trying to heal from all of this post-traumatic stress that this kept bringing on. At that same time, I had volunteered at a theater, a new conservatory theater here in the city, and as at a Tony Awards party, and I won a singing class, admittance to a singing class at a silent auction, and I thought that would really help me maybe with some of this anxiety, and I'd really always enjoyed theater and music, and I thought that would be very fun. A fun way to do some healing, and it ended up changing my life. And I found myself in this world of theater where no one thought anything was wrong with me. And in fact, the more I put myself out there, and the more I learned how to be in front of an audience and sing in front of an audience, which was the scariest thing I could imagine, the more that people were celebrating my actions and my spirit and my behavior. And I had just come from this world where everything I did and said was pathologized, and where I felt really mistreated and discriminated against. And if I wasn't a certain way, then that was not just bad, there was something wrong with me, and I needed to take medication. It was kind of insane. It was really a bit off the wall. So really, by changing how I perceived myself, by taking a few risks, and then by kind of going with where it felt good and where I felt I was actually expressing myself, that's what led to my feeling whole and accepted and valued. And there's nothing more healing than knowing that your environment and that the world values you, because that doesn't occur in the mental health system. I felt like I had no value. And so I would just be left for dead.
And life has just turned around completely. I had a couple of bad episodes at first, a couple of years ago, and maybe even at the beginning of last year. And then it's just been as more and more I get involved in this program, in public speaking and telling my story in voices that heal, I become better. I found out that I become better through telling my story. It's very therapeutic, and if I can help others, that makes me feel better. So I think the number one contribution I have to give is my loving wife, who I would never be here without. And my relationship with her is unsurpassed. It redeems my life from the pit and crowns me with love and compassion. He satisfies my desires with good things, so that my youth is renewed like the eagles. She was there for me to cry on. She was there when I was strapped to a gurney. She was there when I was shuffling around in psych inmate clothes. She was flying down to UCLA every weekend when I was down there.
And I did a lot of calling different doctors and different things and asking a lot of questions, and became acquainted with the OCD and the problems that he was having and how I could handle them. It still was very hard. There was plenty of days that I just wanted to walk away and, go away and be by myself and live my own life. But I felt that wasn't fair, you know, because I did love him. And I educated my family. My family actually understood a lot faster than Eric's family. I educated my family, and my friends would ask questions, and I educated them. But it was a tough haul, especially when he was in bed for those 7 months. That was really, really, really tough.
I just felt the life draining out of me. I felt all my blood draining out, like I was an automaton. And I felt that way for a long time afterwards. Like I lost myself because I couldn't feel. And that was the most damaging thing I could have done at that time. And it was the most damaging thing I'd done up to that time, because I wasn't able to own what I was bringing into this relationship, what I was bringing into this marriage. And I raged at the world that Alex was going to heal. It was the only place at that time that I could bring faith in. I was seeing a therapist at the time that said, very neutrally, he wasn't making an assessment, but he said, what if this is the best that Alex can be? And I said, that is not acceptable. And I wasn't going to hear that, and I wasn't going to believe it. And I didn't. But that was the only thing that I could have faith in at that time. I didn't have a sense of spirituality. I just held to my anger.
It was a real struggle to find a way to, for each of us to heal in a way that we could continue communicating about what it was that, you know, how we felt about all of this. And that took years. You know, these conversations would come up over and over again. You know, we're proud of the work we've done in our relationship, and, you know, we came through a very, very, very dark tunnel.
I had to heal my heart if I was going to get in touch with myself once and for all, and stop raging at everything.
I think that's the crux of healing anything, but mental illness, I'm here to say, is so much about healing heart wounds. It's really about being, you know, hurt chronically.
I took a trip to India actually, and was hospitalized there for another break. It's like a break in my cognitive functioning. And I returned to the States very confused about how to integrate myself back in the world and society. Several months later, I was hospitalized again, and it was about 9 months later. It was very, very scary. I was not sleeping, I was awake, I was up all night. I was believing, you know, I had this thing, chakra on, chakra off. I thought people were going inside of my head. I ended up going to live in a meditation center, which was a very healing experience. For 3 years I stayed there, and it really helped heal my mind. If there's anything, you know, just to leave you with, because I should probably wrap up, is just, you know, the fact that when you see somebody in a process like this, you see somebody, they are in a process, and no matter what they look like, they're going to look different in 10 years. There's hope, you know, for people, and you just never know where we're all headed.
The second thing I like to say is my good friend Brown hit it right on the spot with a dog, because I have a dog. His name is Bodie, and Bodie and Winston partied together at a SPCA function we did last year. Bodie met Winston, and as Brown said, he comes down to Ocean Beach, and we do too, and they kind of hang out together at the coffee shop every now and then.
say thank you. You didn't bark, you didn't bite. We go to St. Luke's Hospital, and he sees the patients there. And then, other than that, say I'm mommy's.
I mentioned Winston the Bulldog. And I never had a dog growing up, and I was interested in how Alex was describing his family, and my father owned a furniture store, and we were middle class, up from whatever, comfortable. But my mother thought that our house was a museum with velvet ropes for whatever reason. So my brother, when he was 5, got a dog for about 2 weeks, which was about 2 weeks old, and expected somehow miraculously this dog was going to learn how to be an adult within about a day. When the poor dog Fluffy, all white, didn't, she stuck poor Fluffy in a bathroom. Fluffy did get revenge because he ate the bathroom up. My brother and I came home and no Fluffy. I said, "Mom, where's Fluffy?" He says, "Fluffy left." Well, the dish is gone too. So that was the kind of emotions that were running in my family. One of the great things of having a dog is it's present every time. So you take it out, it's not interested in your mental illness, trust me. Winston's interested in treats and smelly things, basically. So I recommend that, and also for people who have the artistic bent. I really recommend, because I think one of the things that has helped me is being able to channel all these feelings into things that you can create, and no matter what they are, and I think that's a wonderful thing.
I can't say enough about pets and about animals and having them as a part of your therapy and a part of your recovery. I believe they're very important, and Bodie has been so important in my life. He's the same age as Winston, he's 8 years old, and he's been by my side since day one, and I'm a marathon runner, and he's been training with me. He runs as long as 18 miles with me, and has been with me running as my running partner since day one, since my first marathon. I'm in my second year of peer education with MHA. I'm going back to school to get my master's in social work so I can help people that can't afford services to get clinical services in the field of mental health. I'm an accomplished marathon runner, been on the circuit, run marathons all over the country. I'm actually coaching the team right now for MHA to run the San Francisco Marathon. I'm on the board of the local chapter of the OCD Foundation. I'm on a task force with NAMI, and heavily involved in my church and outreach programs and whatever else I get my hands on. So I don't make money to be successful. I help people, and I work and donate my time, and that's what I refer to as success.
Pathways to healing for me have been two ways. There's like two kind of schools of thought for me about healing. One is you can sort of act your way into better thinking, or think your way into better acting. Let me explain what I mean by that. So by act your way into better thinking, that means I started engaging in activities that I didn't necessarily feel like doing, including exercise, joining political organizations, doing volunteer work, just because my therapist thought it might be helpful. I thought it might be helpful. Prior to a couple of years ago, I never volunteered for anything in my life, ever. I started volunteering for political campaigns in the local district campaign races in San Francisco, and that's what I mean by acting my way into better thinking. I met new people, I met great people, I made new friends. It helped bring me out of my inner shell. I'm also participating in this movie, Voices That Heal, and I think that's a great title because I feel that my voice, sharing my life, is healing for me. It might be healing for some of you, or what you learn might be healing for others that you pass the information on to, but it's healing for us solve speakers. Thinking my way into better acting is the other way. And that there's lots of ways to think your way into better acting, and they both have validity. That includes things like what I call creative visualization. Visualizing every morning when I wake up, I visualize my day, how I would like it to be. it never turns out that way. It doesn't matter. But sometimes I just need to do that to get out of bed and get started. That and some coffee helps too. But visualizing myself moving toward my goals with sound, with images, with olfaction, with making it as real and vivid as possible. That's part of thinking my way into better acting. I'll use personal affirmations. Affirmations is where you repeat to yourself a statement like, I am capable, I am loved, I have friends, I can, I get things done. I'm not sharing all my innermost affirmations, but things like that reaffirm my sense of self. The other message I want to convey is that I believe that everybody could recover from, no matter what the mental illness is. Recovery is possible, hope is possible. I've seen tremendous change in my life, I've seen change in the lives of others. And so, with patience, understanding, and compassion, you will see improvement in those that are suffering. It just may take longer than you think, but there is hope.
The psychiatric profession doesn't understand vibration in the body, vibration in the 5 major organs, which is Chinese medicine, which is where our emotions are produced in the first place. So I finally learned all that and got it taken care of, but the most important piece to me was my family. So I tell people that I've healed, and I am. It's behind me. My life has completely changed, and I'm perfectly grounded, and I'm having a good time. I really love my life. Concerned about the world, trying to do something about it, making films. I run a healing center that I founded. But really nothing could change until I somehow made peace with my family. Basically, the first thing I had to do was learn to forgive my dad. He was a physician. He made me really, really, really sick. And everyone knows this. It's not a secret in my family that my relationship with him was the crux of my illness. And I couldn't reconcile this. How could a father do this to a little boy? All of the ways he talked to me, all the ways he beat me, and all the ways he humiliated me. And I just couldn't reconcile it. My father was a loving man. He was an intelligent man. He was a physician. He was a healer. How could he do this? How could he be so cruel? And, that thought, that irreconciliation made me crazy, right? And despondent. So part of my, at the school where I did my meditation training, I took a class called Forgiving the Past. My family there was never any talk of forgiveness, grounding, boundaries, any of those kind of modern concepts, right? I learned what it meant to forgive, and that was a very difficult process because you have to forgive and then you still have to work out everything that's inside of you as a result of it. But as a result, I had 7 wonderful years with my dad, heart connected, because I forgave him, and he lived on the East Coast, so I would go and spend some time with him, and he was still kind of contentious, but I just worked with it, and I worked with it, and I worked with it. And of course my entire family system changed, right? And I had to set a boundary with my mom and say, I don't want to hear you talking shit about my dad anymore. We would twin on that, right? Because he was very abusive to her too. And we had a little system going, it's us against him. That didn't help me. That didn't help me at all. Having someone agree with me about something that negative is not helpful. It comforts us, right? Don't you think that, it's kind of a shit? But what good is it to be walking around with those thoughts? That's where stigma comes from, okay? And so in my healing practice, I work with heart energies, because unless you learn how to forgive, unless you learn how to have gratitude, unless you really learn how to love, no healing modality in the world is going to work completely, because you have to understand what it means to come from your heart, not your brain, which really disempowers mental illness. If you learn how to communicate from your heart, then who cares? Who cares what's going on above your head? You can get that worked out. Okay, so that's my message here, is that to me, the mess that mental illness is so many things that we have a hard time pinpointing, and we're looking at all of that. But the mess of it comes from the stigma. The mess of it comes from all that fear of divulging, and this makes me weird and unusual. Anxiety is anxiety. Everybody has anxiety. Some people have sensitivities here, some people have sensitivities there. Some people react to life's trauma by kind of fragmenting up here. Some people react to life's trauma by just passing on the abuse. I can't do that. I cannot I cannot be as cruel to people as they were to me, even though sometimes I want to be. I have those impulses. But I stop myself, and I internalize it, and I take care of it inside of me before it goes any further. And that's how I heal. That's how I heal.
It is amazing how things can go and how you can be and how you can live if you just ask for a little bit of help. Might be a little, I was a little prideful because I couldn't read and all that stuff. But when I started losing stuff, and then people was talking about me anyway. Anyway, you take your pill. Anyway, forget it. Forget it. I'm not trying to be, I'm gonna be ideal. I'm gonna come out here, encourage people, share my story, share what happened to me, share what I'm doing now. Whew. I was newly appointed to the Mayor's Council on Disabilities about 4 or 5 months ago. So, and public access television, which is here in San Francisco. I have a cable show, which is called Black Diva Media. It's on every first and third Friday. It will be coming on tonight at 5:30 live. I have a children's show. My grandchildren, a whole bunch of other children from the community will be coming into the studio. Every April, I always honor children. And then I work, and I'm a part of Solve, and I just keep going, and just like that little Energizer battery, I don't know when I want to stop. I tell them I'm going to rest when I die. If you want to rest now, go ahead. Now, it's nothing wrong with it. You know you need to rest. But I say as for ideal and what I'm doing and about my mission, breaking the stigma on mental illness and sharing my story and my life and my triumphs, my good, my bad, my not so good, my not so bad, and excusing that, did you take your pill today? Don't even hear it, because I'm Ideal Wilson. I'm going to be who I'm going to be, and I'm ghetto fabulous. And I tell people all the time, no, you didn't meet nobody ghetto. Remember, you met somebody ghetto fabulous. Thank you.
The opportunity to paint, to draw, to write, all that stuff and more, I begin to rejoice, celebrating this gift of another day of life. This gift bestowed upon me of conscious thought, this miraculous ability to think. Not only could I think, I could view the great masterworks, from the photos of Ansel Adams, the paintings of the great artists like Claude Monet, great movies, the visual masterworks like Avatar. It's a masterpiece. I have another day to listen to great music, dance to a beat, and be thrilled by the great talent around us, including the talent I've seen here tonight. This is what I remember. I have friends. I have family that care about me, people I care about. I have loved ones. This is a real measure of something valuable in my life. I enjoy abundance of what matters the most in health, friends, and community. Most importantly, in possessing a life with a sense of meaning and purpose. My blessings are many, my blessings are diverse, my blessings are rich. Am I poor? No, I am not poor.